How does a single pair of crisp paper dollars obliterate a sprawling $200 million empire overnight? Standing on the penthouse balcony of his glass skyscraper, billionaire tycoon Arthur Vance watched his life work vanish into smoke. He had built a dynasty on cold, ruthless calculation, yet his own unbelievable pettiness unleashed a financial catastrophe so massive that Wall Street was left absolutely paralyzed. Arthur Vance was a legend in corporate logistics, known as much for his immense fortune as his terrifying stinginess. He controlled shipping routes across 3 continents, making millions before lunch every single day. Yet, despite his unfathomable wealth, Arthur treated every penny like a life-or-death battle, constantly scrutinizing expense reports and terrorizing lower management over insignificant rounding errors. But behind his pristine image lay a dark, toxic culture of fear that was about to explode into ruin. Arthur believed that mercy was weakness and frugality was power. He regularly slashed employee benefits while upgrading his private jet collection, believing his brilliant mind made him immune to mistake or failure. Nobody dared challenge his outrageous economic demands. Inside the sleek glass headquarters of Vance Logistics, employees walked on eggshells every morning. One wrong line item on a ledger could cost a senior director their entire career. Arthur walked the polished marble halls like a tyrant, inspecting desk drawers and demanding explanations for wasted printer paper. His obsession with cutting micro-costs was slowly eroding his company foundation. Little did Arthur know, his insane obsession with small change was crafting his ultimate downfall. The billionaire was preparing to finalize the biggest deal in international history, a staggering $200 million contract with a sovereign Pacific syndicate. It was the crown jewel of his career, promising to double his vast net worth in less than a year. The deal required flawless execution, endless legal paperwork, and absolute precision down to the last decimal point. Enter Samuel, a 60-year-old senior compliance accountant who had served the company for 20 faithful years. Samuel knew every obscure tax law and international regulation, spending sleepless nights auditing the massive digital stack to ensure absolute perfection before the upcoming signing. The contract involved high-stakes maritime trade routes across foreign territories with strict legal frameworks. Every document had to pass through automated international clearinghouses before government officials would authorize the venture. Samuel spent 18 straight hours meticulously verifying thousands of digital entries, determined to protect the firm from any unexpected legal technicalities during final submission. But hidden inside the dense international code was a tiny, overlooked detail that held deadly power. As Samuel reached page 400 of the digital filing ledger, his eyes caught an unfamiliar line item. It was a mandatory $2 digital protocol processing fee required by the Maritime Sovereign Authority to legally validate cross-border corporate registrations. Samuel knew that international treaties were notoriously strict about administrative fee settlements. If the fee remained unpaid, the entire contract tender would automatically flag as incomplete inside the automated registry. Knowing the incredible stakes, Samuel printed the verification invoice, highlighted the $2 requirement in red ink, and hurried straight toward Arthur's top-floor corner office. Inside the lavish office, Arthur was sipping 50-year-old scotch and admiring a golden model of his flagship cargo ship. He was already celebrating his upcoming triumph, mentally adding $200 million to his personal balance sheet. When Samuel knocked nervously and entered, Arthur barely looked up from his mahogany desk, waving his hand impatiently. Samuel handed over the paper, pointing to the trivial charge, completely unaware of the storm brewing. "Mr. Vance," Samuel explained softly, "we must release this $2 transaction to validate the registry. Without it, the system marks our filing as unverified." Arthur stared at the tiny number on the paper, his eyebrows furrowing with sudden, burning anger. "Are you telling me," Arthur barked, his voice echoing through the glass room, "that some foreign government is trying to nickel and dime my billion-dollar firm with an unapproved $2 junk surcharge?" Samuel tried to remain calm, explaining that the fee was an automated legal protocol, not a negotiable business tax, and had to be paid immediately. Arthur slammed his fist onto his mahogany desk, knocking over a crystal paperweight. "I did not become a billionaire by letting bureaucrats steal $2 from me," he yelled. "It is about the principle. Delete this charge from our accounting system immediately." I refuse to pay a single penny that is not explicitly detailed in our primary agreement. Rehook Samuel gasped, realizing the billionaire's pride was pushing them toward an unthinkable cliff. Sir, Samuel pleaded, if we tamper with the automated registry feed, the system will mark our entire submission as non-compliant. It is only $2. I will pay it out of my own pocket right now. But Arthur's fragile ego felt deeply insulted. You will do no such thing. Arthur screamed, standing up and towering over the loyal veteran employee. You are questioning my business wisdom over pocket change? You are an incompetent, paranoid old fool who lacks the spine to stand up to extortion. I run this empire, and my word is absolute law in this building. Arthur snatched the file from Samuel's hands and tore the notification sheet into tiny pieces, dropping them into the waste basket. He immediately called human resources on speakerphone while staring cold-bloodedly into Samuel's tired eyes. Terminate Samuel immediately, Arthur ordered ruthless, and escort him out of the building. His paranoia is a threat to company morale. Rehook before security dragged him away, Samuel delivered a haunting warning that echoed down the hallway. You may possess billions, Arthur, but your arrogance has made you bankrupt in wisdom. That $2 charge is the legal keystone of the entire deal. Disregard it, and you will lose everything you have spent your miserable life building. Arthur simply laughed loudly, tossing Samuel's belongings into a cardboard box and slamming the heavy door shut. He immediately logged into the corporate financial ledger himself, manually overriding the system alert and removing the pending $2 authorization request. He smiled proudly, convinced he had just saved his company from being tricked by foreign bureaucratic greed. In the digital background, however, the automated international trade server registered the manual deletion as a breach of transaction protocol. The system placed the $200 million contract on a temporary 72-hour holding status, waiting for the missing $2 payment. If the fee remained unpaid when the timer expired, the legal tender would default to the second highest bidder. Rehook but Arthur was completely oblivious to the ticking digital bomb waiting to explode in his face. Across town in a glass tower overlooking the harbor, Marcus Sterling sat in his executive suite. Marcus was Arthur's most bitter corporate rival, a cunning mastermind who monitored public trade registries 24 hours a day searching for the slightest vulnerability. Marcus's automated tracking software suddenly flashed a red warning icon next to Vance Global's tender filing. The registry showed a status flag pending compliance fee unpaid 2.00 protocol surcharge. Marcus rubbed his hands together with a malicious grin, instantly realizing that Arthur's infamous cheapness had created a once-in-a-lifetime loophole. Marcus immediately summoned his chief legal counsel to analyze the public treaty terms governing the contract. If Vance fails to settle that small fee before tomorrow morning, Marcus asked eagerly, what happens to the deal? His lawyer smiled sinisterly and replied, Clause 84 Section B states that non-compliance automatically forfeits the agreement directly to our firm. Rehook Marcus immediately ordered his legal team to prepare a takeover filing while keeping completely silent. Meanwhile, Arthur spent the evening hosting a grand cocktail party at a 5-star hotel to celebrate his victory. He bragged to high-profile investors and news reporters about his unmatched business strategy, sipping expensive champagne and accepting endless congratulations. During the party, Arthur's newly promoted head of finance approached him with a look of pale concern. Mr. Vance, our automated legal portal is showing an unverified compliance status, she whispered softly. Arthur scoffed arrogantly, waving his champagne flute offhandedly. Ignore those automated glitches, he replied dismissively. The deal is locked, signed, and ours. The night passed slowly as the digital countdown on the international trade server ticked closer to zero. Every hour that passed made the default permanent and legally binding under international maritime law. While Arthur slept soundly in his penthouse mansion, the global system automatically logged the failure to fulfill the required $2 administrative deposit. Rehook at 8 in the morning, the digital timer expired, triggering a seismic shift in global finance. The high-stakes official signing ceremony was hosted in the grand ballroom of the Intercontinental Hotel. Hundreds of journalists, news camera crews, and international dignitaries filled the hall, eagerly waiting to capture the historic moment on live broadcast television. Arthur arrived wearing a bespoke $10,000 suit, beaming with pride as he shook hands with government officials. He walked onto the stage, taking his seat behind a massive wooden desk holding the grand leather-bound agreement. The foreign trade minister stood beside him, holding a golden pen to formalize the $200 million logistics partnership. Arthur grabbed the pen, flashbulbs lighting up the room like blinding lightning strikes across the stage. Just as he touched the tip of the pen to the paper, heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom slammed open with a deafening bang. A team of international trade lawyers marched down the center aisle, accompanied by federal officials. Rehook, the lead attorney, held up a certified red folder, shouting loudly into the quiet auditorium. "Stop the ceremony immediately. Vance Global is legally barred from executing this agreement." The crowd gasped in shock, while Arthur leapt up from his leather chair, his face turning bright red with intense rage and immediate confusion. "What is the meaning of this outrage?" Arthur roared into his microphone, pointing an angry finger at the lawyers. "I am Arthur Vance. This contract is mine, and I demand you leave this stage right now." The chief trade minister stepped back, looking at the legal papers presented by the legal team with deep, growing concern. The lead attorney handed the documents directly to the trade minister, speaking clearly into the open press microphones. Under international maritime treaty rules, Vance Global failed to clear mandatory compliance verification prior to the statutory deadline. An unpaid transaction of $2 resulted in automatic disqualification and total forfeiture of the agreement. Rehook Arthur felt his heart drop into his stomach as cold sweat broke out across his forehead. $2? Arthur stammered, his voice cracking horribly in front of hundreds of rolling media cameras. "You are stopping a $200 million contract over a pathetic $2 error? That is complete madness. I will write you a check right now." "It is too late, Mr. Vance," the legal official stated coldly, displaying the digital registry printout on the large stage screens. "The automated system locked 18 minutes ago. Because your firm defaulted on the statutory requirement, Clause 84 Section B has been triggered. The entire contract is hereby awarded to the secondary bidder." Right on cue, Marcus Sterling walked calmly into the ballroom, surrounded by his smiling executive team. Marcus walked up onto the main stage, picked up the golden pen Arthur had dropped, and signed the secondary agreement document in front of the stunned, silent crowd. The trade minister nodded approval and signed beside him. Rehook Arthur stood frozen in horror as Marcus shook the minister's hand, securing the multi-million-dollar deal. Reporters began screaming questions at Arthur, flashing camera lights directly into his pale, trembling face. "Mr. Vance, is it true you lost a $200 million empire over $2? How could you make such a catastrophic mistake?" Unable to breathe, Arthur stumbled off the stage, surrounded by security guards pushing past relentless journalists. News of the unbelievable blunder spread across global financial networks faster than wildfire. Headlines around the world mocked the billionaire's petty greed, dubbing him the cheapest man in corporate history and a colossal failure. By noon, the financial fallout became a complete catastrophe for Vance Global Logistics stock value. Terrified investors began dumping their shares frantically, causing the company stock price to crash by 65% in less than 3 hours. Wall Street trading desks suspended the stock as panic spread throughout the international market. Rehook, but the nightmare was only just beginning for the ruined billionaire in his ivory tower. Back at headquarters, Arthur burst into his executive office, demanding his legal team file immediate lawsuits against the government. But his senior attorneys shook their heads grimly, informing him that the international treaty was airtight and completely unappealable in court. At 2 in the afternoon, the board of directors convened an emergency meeting without inviting Arthur. Recognizing that his public humiliation had permanently destroyed the brand's reputation, they voted unanimously to strip him of his CEO title and terminate his executive leadership position immediately, throwing him out without severance. Within 48 hours, major investment banks called in over $400 million in commercial loans. Because the major deal had failed to materialize, Vance Global lacked the liquidity required to service its debts. Creditors rushed into federal court, filing forced bankruptcy petitions to seize all corporate assets and property. Rehook. The domino effect was unstoppable, destroying every single asset Arthur owned within weeks. Federal marshals placed seizure notices on Arthur's glass office building, his private luxury jet, and his lavish beachfront mansions. His personal bank accounts were frozen by court order, leaving him without access to his vast personal wealth. Arthur was forced to sell his personal vehicle collection and luxury yachts at auction for pennies on the dollar. The man who once controlled trade routes across 3 continents was left completely bankrupt, disgraced, and utterly alone. His wealthy friends stopped answering his phone calls, shunning him like an infectious disease. 6 months later, Arthur walked down a rainy city street wearing a worn jacket and carrying his remaining personal belongings in a battered canvas bag. He was living in a small rented studio apartment on the edge of town, surviving on modest government assistance. His glorious empire was nothing but a painful memory. Rehook. As he passed a small sidewalk cafe, a familiar voice called out his name gently from a corner table. Arthur turned around and saw Samuel, his former chief accountant, sitting peacefully with a warm cup of coffee and a newspaper. Samuel looked healthy, relaxed, and remarkably content with his quiet life. Arthur stood frozen, consumed by deep embarrassment and overwhelming shame in front of his former employee. Samuel gestured toward an empty chair across from him, smiling warmly without a trace of malice or resentment. "Sit down, Arthur," Samuel said softly. "Let me buy you a fresh cup of warm coffee." Arthur sat down slowly, resting his weary head in his trembling hands as tears filled his tired eyes. "I destroyed everything, Samuel," Arthur whispered, his voice trembling with deep regret. "I lost my company, my fortune, and my reputation, all because I refused to listen to you over $2 miserable. Rehook. Samuel pulled 2 crisp $1 bills from his leather wallet and placed them gently on the small table between them. "It was never about the $2, Arthur," Samuel explained gently. "It was about your overwhelming pride. Pride blinds powerful men to small truths, convincing them that they are above the rules that bind everyone else." Arthur stared at the 2 paper dollars resting on the table, feeling the immense weight of his colossal folly. If he had only swallowed his arrogance and paid that trivial charge, he would still be sitting at the top of the financial world. Instead, his petty stubbornness had stripped away everything he cherished. Samuel handed the $2 to the barista, paid for Arthur's coffee, and stood up to leave. "I hold no bitterness toward you, Arthur," Samuel said kindly, placing a hand on the broken man's shoulder. "I hope you finally find peace now that you have learned what money truly cannot buy." Rehook. As Samuel walked away into the bustling city crowd, Arthur took a slow sip of the warm coffee. He realized that the greatest financial tragedy in corporate history was not caused by market crashes or rival schemes, but by his own unyielding, foolish arrogance inside a penthouse office. The fall of Arthur Vance became a famous case study taught in business schools all around the world. Professors use his story to teach future business executives about the deadly danger of unchecked ego, corporate hubris, and the catastrophic importance of paying attention to tiny, vital details. Meanwhile, Marcus Sterling's logistics firm flourished with the $200 million contract, expanding its reach across global markets. Marcus kept a framed picture of 2 $1 bills hanging inside his chief executive office as a daily reminder never to let pettiness or arrogant pride ruin a great opportunity. Rehook. Life has a poetic way of teaching us humility when we refuse to learn it ourselves. No matter how high you rise or how many billions you accumulate, a single moment of arrogant foolishness can tear down a lifetime of hard work in a matter of seconds. Arthur Vance spent the rest of his quiet days working at a local charity, helping small businesses manage their accounts honestly. He never chased riches again, having learned the hard way that true wealth lies in humility, wisdom, and respecting the small things before they destroy your entire world. What a crazy, unforgettable lesson on human pride. If this mind-blowing story held your attention, please hit that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and share this video with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more incredible storytelling videos. Thanks for watching.